So what do a misplaced comma, a wrong turn, and a lost spacecraft have in common? Well, they all cost millions, sometimes even billions of dollars. Buckle up, because these blunders might just make your last typo feel a whole lot less painful. We've all had those days, where you send an email to your boss with a "sent from my iPhone" typo that says, "Sent from my iPhoney"? Embarrassing? Yes. Costly? Maybe just a little bit of your dignity. But trust me, it's nothing compared to what we're about to dive into. Today, we're not just talking about little oopsie daisies. Nope. We are going full-blown historical. How did that happen? I'm talking about errors so massive, so mind-bogglingly costly, they make spilling coffee on your new laptop look like a minor inconvenience. We've dug deep. We found the receipts, literally in some cases. And we're going to count down the top 10 most expensive mistakes in history. These are the kinds of blunders that make you go glad that wasn't me. So get comfy. Maybe grab a stress ball. Because some of these stories are truly unbelievable. We're going to laugh. We're going to gasp. And most importantly, we're all going to feel a whole lot better about our own everyday slip-ups. Let's get into it. All right, kicking off our list at number 10, we're blasting off into space, or at least we tried to. Picture this. It's 1999. The Backstreet Boys are dominating the charts. Everyone's worried about Y2K, and NASA, those brilliant folks, are launching the Mars Climate Orbiter. This wasn't just any satellite, folks. This was a $125 million high-tech piece of equipment designed to study the Martian climate. Pretty important stuff, right? You'd think with a price tag like that, they'd, double-check the math, maybe triple-check. So the orbiter launches, everything seems A-OK. It's cruising through space, millions of miles from home, getting ready to do its Martian weather report. But then, as it approached Mars, Houston started having a real problem. Instead of gracefully entering orbit, the spacecraft got a little too friendly with the Martian atmosphere. A little too close for comfort. And by too close, I mean it got way too low, likely disintegrated, or skipped off into space. Lost forever. Poof. Gone. Vanished. Like my motivation on a Monday morning. Now you're probably thinking, what happened? Solar flare? Alien attack? Did it forget its space sunscreen? Nope. It was something much, much simpler and honestly, way more embarrassing. It turns out, one team of engineers at Lockheed Martin Astronautics, who built the orbiter, used imperial units, inches, feet, pounds. Meanwhile, the NASA team at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who were navigating the thing, were using the metric system meters, kilograms. It's like one team was baking a cake with cups, and the other with grams, but for a $125 million space robot. Can you imagine that meeting? So, Bob, did you convert the thrust data from pound seconds to Newton seconds? Convert? Is that like converting Fahrenheit to Celsius? Because I always just guess on that one. That tiny, tiny oversight, that failure to hit convert units in their space calculator, caused the orbiter to miscalculate its trajectory. It thought it was at a safe altitude, but in reality it was skimming dangerously low. It's the ultimate measure twice, cut once lesson, but for rocket science. The cost? A cool $125 million for the spacecraft itself. But that's not all. Add in the cost of the mission development, the launch, the years of research. We're talking closer to $327.6 million in 1999 money. That's like a lot of Beanie Babies. It's a mistake that makes you want to just hide under your desk. Even the smartest people on the planet, literal rocket scientists, can make a boo-boo. A very, very expensive boo-boo. So the lesson here, folks, always double-check your units, whether you're building a birdhouse or a multi-million-dollar Mars orbiter, and maybe, just maybe, have one universal system for space travel, right? It's not rocket science. Oh, wait, it is rocket science. That makes it even funnier, or sadder. Definitely more expensive. What a way to start the list. Coming in at number 9, we have a story that's legendary, tragic, and, let's face it, a colossal mistake. The sinking of the RMS Titanic in 1912. Now, this ship was the marvel of its age, the biggest, most luxurious ocean liner ever built. They called it unsinkable. Unsinkable, you guys. That's like calling a restaurant food poisoning proof. You're just tempting fate at that point, aren't you? It was the height of Gilded Age luxury, setting sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, to New York City. Everyone who was anyone was on board. Or so it seemed. The passenger list was a who's who of high society. alongside hopeful immigrants looking for a new life in America. The journey was supposed to be a triumph of engineering and a symbol of a new era of transatlantic travel. Imagine the excitement, the champagne flowing, the fancy dinners. What could possibly go wrong on this floating palace, this pinnacle of human achievement? Well, let me tell you, quite a bit, actually. The crew received multiple warnings about icebergs in the North Atlantic. Not just one or two, but several. It's like getting those low battery warnings on your phone, and you're like, nah, I've got time, and then bam, phone dead. Except in this case, BAM was a 100,000-ton ship hitting a massive chunk of ancient ice. Some reports say the wireless operators were overwhelmed with passenger messages and didn't pass all the warnings to the bridge. Others say the warnings were received but not given the serious attention they deserved. On the fateful night of April 14, 1912, despite the warnings, the Titanic was still cruising at a pretty good clip around 22 knots. Lookouts spotted the iceberg, but it was too late. The ship struck the ice, tearing a series of holes along its starboard side. The unsinkable ship, designed with watertight compartments that were supposed to keep it afloat, even if a few were breached, had a fatal flaw. The iceberg damage was too extensive. It was like a zipper opening up the side of the ship. The result was catastrophic. Over 1,500 people lost their lives in the freezing waters of the Atlantic. There weren't enough lifeboats for everyone on board, a massive oversight and a tragic miscalculation based on outdated regulations. The ship itself, which cost about $7.5 million to build in 1912, that's roughly $200 million today, was lost to the depths. The financial cost was huge, but the human cost was immeasurable. It's a somber story, a true tragedy. The irony, of course, is that unsinkable claim. It's a chilling reminder about hubris and the importance of heeding warnings. So what's the light joke here? Maybe always listen to your weather app, even if it's for icebergs in the middle of the ocean. And if someone tells you something is unsinkable, maybe pack an extra life vest, just in case. It's a tough one, but a mistake of epic proportions. All right, let's shift gears from icy waters to the red-hot world of tech for our number 8. This one, folks, is a classic what were they thinking moment. We're talking about Yahoo and Google. Yes, that Google. The one you probably used to find this video. Back in the late 90s, the internet was still kind of the Wild West. Yahoo was the king, the big sheriff in town. They were the search engine, the portal to the wonders of the web. Then along came these two Stanford guys, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, with a little something called Google. They had this newfangled search algorithm, PageRank, that was actually pretty good at finding what you were looking for. Imagine that. A search engine that worked. In 1998, these young, bright-eyed entrepreneurs approached Yahoo with an offer. Hey, want to buy our little search engine? We'll give it to you for a cool $1 million. $1 million. Now, $1 million is a lot of money to you and me, right? That's a lifetime supply of pizza rolls. But for Yahoo, a tech giant at the time, it was pocket change. Chump change. They were rolling in dot-com dough. So what did Yahoo do? They looked at this little Google thing with its funny name and its simple interface, and they essentially said, nah, we're good. We've got this whole search thing figured out. They took a hard pass. Can you imagine being in that room? Google, you say? Sounds like baby talk. Our users love clicking through 17 pages of irrelevant links. Thank you very much. Fast forward a few years. Google starts growing and growing and growing, like that chia pet you forgot about in the back of your cupboard. Suddenly it's not so little anymore. Yahoo, realizing they just might have made a tiny boo-boo, reportedly came back with a counteroffer of $3 billion in 2002. But by then, Google was like, new phone, who dis? Today, Google's parent company, Alphabet, is worth, well, let's just say a lot more than $1 million. We're talking trillions with a T, trillions. That $1 million decision by Yahoo has to be one of the biggest oops moments in tech history, if not all of business history. It's like being offered a winning lottery ticket for $1 and saying, nah, I don't like the numbers. The missed opportunity is just staggering. It's the financial equivalent of a facepalm that echoes through eternity. So what's the takeaway? Maybe always take a second look at the little guy with a good idea. And if someone offers you the future of the internet for the price of a nice San Francisco apartment, maybe, just maybe, say yes. Poor Yahoo. They went from being the search king to, well, what does Yahoo do now anyway? Asking for a friend. This one just makes you shake your head and chuckle or cry if you were a Yahoo shareholder. Next up, at number 7, we're heading to Italy for a mistake that's so iconic. It's literally a landmark. I'm talking about the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Bellissimo. Construction on this bell tower began way back in 1173. That's like medieval times, folks. Knights' castles, questionable hygiene, the whole shebang. The plan was simple. Build a beautiful, tall tower to show off Pisa's wealth and power. Emphasis on straight. Well, things didn't quite go according to plan. Almost as soon as they finished the first few floors, they noticed a little something. A tiny, almost imperceptible tilt. Is it just me? One builder probably said to another. Or is this thing looking a bit tipsy? Turns out the ground underneath was a bit too soft and unstable on one side. It was like trying to build a giant Jenga tower on a waterbed. Not ideal for a massive marble structure. They tried to compensate, of course. As they built higher, they made the new floors taller on one side to try and correct the lean. Smart, right? Except it just made the whole thing heavier and caused it to sink even on that soft side. It's like when you try to fix a wobbly table by putting a napkin under one leg, but then another leg starts wobbling, and soon you've got a whole stack of napkins and the table is still doing the cha-cha. Construction actually halted for almost 100 years due to wars and whatnot, which probably gave the soil some time to settle. If they'd finished it all at once, it likely would have just toppled over completely. Whoops, there goes the neighborhood bell tower. But no, they eventually got back to it, still trying to correct that pesky lean, and finally finished it in the mid-1300s. And guess what? It was still leaning. Now here's the funny part. This architectural blunder, this massive engineering oopsie, should have been a disaster, a symbol of failure. But instead, it became one heck of an Italian tourist attraction. Millions of people flock to Pisa every year, not to see a perfectly straight tower, but to see this wonderfully quirky, tilted marvel. Everyone wants that classic photo where they look like they're holding it up. You know the one, you've probably taken it. So, what started as a really expensive for the 12th century mistake turned into an accidental icon. It's a testament to making the best of a bad situation, or as I like to call it, accidental architecture. 0. Sometimes your biggest mistake can turn into your most famous feature. It's like that haircut you got that was supposed to be a trim but ended up being a mohawk, and suddenly everyone loved it. The Leaning Tower of Pisa proof that sometimes a little imperfection is what makes something truly special. And hey, at least it didn't fall over yet. Get ready for this one, folks, because it's a story that will make your stomach drop. Especially if you've ever sold something and then saw it become super valuable later. At number 6, we have the tale of Ron Wayne, the third co-founder of Apple. Yes, Apple, the company that makes your iPhone, your Mac, all those shiny gadgets we can't live without. We all know Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the dynamic duo, but there was a third amigo, Ron Wayne. Back in 1976, these three guys started Apple Computer. Wayne, who was older and had more business experience at the time, drew the first Apple logo. It was a super intricate drawing of Isaac Newton under an apple tree, very different from today's sleek design. He also wrote the manual for the Apple I computer and drafted their partnership agreement. For his efforts, he received a 10% stake in the company. 10% of Apple. Can you even imagine? Now here's where the oops comes in. Just 12 days after co-founding the company, Ron Wayne decided he wanted out. He was reportedly worried about the potential financial risk. See, if Apple went into debt, all partners would be personally liable. Wayne had assets that could be seized, unlike the younger, less established Jobs and Wozniak. He'd had a previous business venture fail, and he was a bit gun-shy. Understandable, right? You gotta protect yourself. So he made a decision. He sold his 10% stake in Apple back to Jobs and Wozniak. And how much did he get for this 10% slice of what would become one of the most valuable companies in the world? Hold on to your hats, people. He got $800. $800. I probably have more than that in loose change in my car. Okay, maybe not, but you get the idea. He later received an additional $1,500 to forfeit any future claims against the company, so a grand total of $2,300. Fast forward to today. What would that 10% stake be worth? Well, Apple's market cap fluctuates, but we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. Let that sink in. Hundreds of billions from an $800 investment. This has to be the world's most expensive case of seller's remorse. Can you imagine watching Apple grow year after year, knowing you had a piece of that pie and sold it for less than the price of the first iPhone? Ouch. Just ouch. Ron Wayne has said in interviews that he doesn't regret his decision, that he made the best choice for himself at the time, given his circumstances and desire to avoid risk. And you have to respect that. He valued peace of mind over potential riches. But still, it's a story that makes you think, what if? He could have been one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Instead, he's a fascinating footnote in tech history. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest risks come with the biggest rewards. This next one at number 5 is a somber and truly heartbreaking mistake. We're talking about the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster in 1986. This wasn't just a financial loss, it was a profound human tragedy that shook America and the world. The Challenger was set to launch on a cold January morning, carrying 7 astronauts, including Krista McAuliffe, who was to be the first teacher in space. There was so much excitement and anticipation for this mission. The launch itself was watched by millions, many of them schoolchildren eager to see McAuliffe make history. But just 73 seconds after liftoff, the Challenger horrifically broke apart, resulting in the deaths of all 7 crew members. It was a national trauma, a moment frozen in time for anyone who witnessed it. The images are seared into our collective memory. It was a stark reminder of the inherent dangers of space exploration. The investigation that followed revealed a deeply troubling cause. The disaster was traced to the failure of O-rings in one of the solid rocket boosters. These O-rings were critical seals designed to prevent hot gases from escaping. However, on that exceptionally cold Florida morning, the O-rings became less resilient, less able to seal properly. It was a known issue, folks. Engineers at Morton Thiokol, the company that manufactured the boosters, had warned NASA managers about the potential for O-ring failure in cold temperatures. There were heated discussions the night before the launch. Engineers expressed serious concerns, recommending that the launch be postponed. They presented data showing how the O-rings performed poorly in cold weather. But unfortunately, those warnings were ultimately overruled by NASA officials, partly due to launch schedule pressures, and perhaps a desire to avoid another delay. It was a catastrophic failure of communication and decision-making. The financial cost was staggering. The shuttle itself was valued at around $3 billion in today's money. The investigation, recovery efforts, and the subsequent grounding of the shuttle fleet for nearly 3 years cost billions more. Some estimates put the total financial impact around $5.5 billion. But of course, the human cost was incalculable. 7 lives lost, a nation in mourning, and a deep blow to the space program's confidence. This tragedy underscored the critical importance of listening to engineers and prioritizing safety above all else, especially in high-stakes endeavors like spaceflight. It's a respectful but important reminder that when experts raise red flags, those warnings need to be taken with the utmost seriousness. The Challenger disaster led to significant changes in NASA's safety protocols and decision-making processes, but it came at an unbearable price, a truly expensive mistake in every sense of the word. All right, moving to number 4, we have an environmental and economic catastrophe of epic proportions, the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a disaster that unfolded over months, spewing millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. It's a stark reminder that sometimes trying to save a little time or money can end up costing you, well, pretty much everything. The Deepwater Horizon was a massive state-of-the-art offshore drilling rig. On April 20th, 2010, a surge of natural gas blasted through a concrete core recently installed to seal the well. The gas ignited, leading to a horrific explosion and fire. Tragically, 11 crew members lost their lives. The rig, a multi-billion-dollar piece of equipment, burned for 2 days before sinking into the Gulf, leaving the wellhead gushing oil. For 87 agonizing days, oil poured into the ocean. It was like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Efforts to cap the well were incredibly complex and fraught with setbacks. We all watched horrified as images of oil slicks, tar balls, and suffering wildlife filled our screens. The environmental impact was devastating, affecting marine life, coastal habitats, and the livelihoods of countless people who depend on the Gulf for fishing and tourism. It was an ecological gut punch. Investigations later revealed a cascade of failures and questionable decisions made by BP and its contractors in the lead-up to the blowout. There were reports of cut corners on safety procedures, flawed well design, and inadequate testing of the cement seal, all seemingly in an effort to save time and money on a well that was already behind schedule and over budget. It's that classic pressure cooker scenario: hurry up, get it done, move on to the next thing. But with something as complex and potentially dangerous as deep water drilling, shortcuts can have unimaginable consequences. The costs? Oh boy, where do we even begin? BP has spent over $65 billion on cleanup efforts, fines, compensation, and legal fees. $65 billion. That's more than the GDP of some countries. The rig itself, valued at around $700 million, was a total loss. The economic impact on the Gulf Coast states was immense, with fisheries closed, tourism plummeting, and local businesses struggling. And the long-term environmental damage? Scientists are still studying it, but it's clear the ecosystem took a massive hit. The witty line here, if we can even call it that, is that some shortcuts are the longest, most expensive detours you can possibly take. The Deepwater Horizon spill is a sobering lesson in corporate responsibility, risk management, and the critical importance of prioritizing safety and environmental protection over profit margins. It shows how a series of seemingly small decisions, driven by financial pressures, can accumulate into a mistake of almost incomprehensible scale. A true deepwater disaster. Coming in hot at number 3 is a business blunder so big, it's still taught in MBA programs as a cautionary tale. I'm talking about the infamous AOL-Time Warner merger of 2000. Oh, the optimism, the hype. It was billed as the marriage of the century, a groundbreaking fusion of old media, Time Warner with its movies, TV shows, and magazines, and new media, AOL, the king of dial-up internet at the time. You've Got Mail was about to become You've Got It All. The deal was announced in January 2000, right at the peak of the dot-com bubble. AOL, with its sky-high stock valuation, acquired Time Warner for a staggering $164 billion, creating a combined entity valued at around $350 billion. $350 billion. That's a number so big, my brain just sees a lot of zeros. The idea was to create a media behemoth that would dominate both content creation and internet distribution. Synergy, baby. They envisioned a world where Time Warner content, think Warner Brothers movies, HBO shows, Time magazine articles, would be seamlessly delivered to millions of AOL subscribers. It sounded good on paper, right? Like peanut butter and chocolate. But this turned out to be more like peanut butter and anchovies. The cultures of the two companies clashed spectacularly. AOL was new, brash, tech-focused. Time Warner was old school, traditional, content-focused. It was like a Silicon Valley startup trying to merge with your grandpa's favorite newspaper. Then, just as the ink was drying on the deal, the dot-com bubble burst. Boom! AOL's advertising revenue plummeted. Dial-up internet became obsolete as broadband took over. Suddenly, that sky-high stock valuation didn't look so sky-high anymore. The promised synergies never materialized. Instead, there was infighting, strategic blunders, and a whole lot of finger-pointing. The result? One of the biggest financial disasters in corporate history. In 2002, AOL-Time Warner reported a net loss of nearly $99 billion, the largest annual loss ever reported by a company at the time. $99 billion? The value of the merged company cratered. Eventually, they unmerged, going their separate ways, much poorer and presumably wiser. It was like a really expensive, very public divorce. So what's the joke here? How not to merge companies? A $350 billion guide? It's a textbook example of overpaying, underplanning, and massively underestimating the challenges of integrating two vastly different corporate cultures, especially when one of them is built on a rapidly changing technology. It's a mistake that makes even the worst first date look like a roaring success. The AOL-Time Warner saga, a true titan of terrible transactions. All right, for our number 2 spot, we're zooming over to Japan for a mistake that will make you triple-check every email you ever send again. This is the story of a typo, a tiny little slip of the finger. But this wasn't just any typo, folks. This typo cost a company $225 million. Yes, you heard that right. $225 million because of one wrong keystroke. It happened in December 2005 at Mizuho Securities, a major Japanese brokerage firm. A trader was trying to sell shares of a newly listed recruitment company called JCOM. The plan was to sell one single share for 610,000 yen, which was about $5,000 at the time. A pretty standard transaction, right? Something these traders do all day long. What could go wrong? Well, hold my sake. In a classic case of fat finger syndrome, or maybe just a really bad Monday morning, the trader accidentally entered the order. Instead of selling one share at 610,000 yen, they entered an order to sell 610,000 shares at 1 yen each. That's not a small difference, people. That's like trying to sell your car for $10,000 and accidentally listing it for $10 with 10,000 cars available. The system, incredibly, accepted this ludicrous order. Now, you'd think there would be like a million pop-ups saying, "Are you sure? This is insane." But nope, the order went through. And because it was at such a ridiculously low price, 1 yen is less than a US penny, buyers jumped on it faster than you can say, "Arigato." The Tokyo Stock Exchange was flooded with sell orders for JCOM, a company that, by the way, only about 14,500 shares outstanding in total. So they were trying to sell 40 times more shares than actually existed. Mizuho Securities frantically tried to cancel the order, but it was too late. The damage was done. The error caused chaos on the Tokyo Stock Exchange, even dragging down the Nikkei index. The brokerage firm tried to buy back the shares, but of course now they had to pay much, much more than 1 yen per share. The final bill for this monumental typo? An estimated $225 million in losses for Mizuho. Some reports put it even higher, closer to $340 million, all because of a couple of swap numbers. This is the ultimate measure twice, click once story for the digital age. It makes that time you accidentally replied all to the entire company with a picture of your cat look like a minor social faux pas. Can you imagine being that trader? You'd probably want to crawl into the floppy disk drive and never come out. It's a hilarious, yet terrifying reminder to always double-check your work before hitting that big, scary enter key, especially if that enter key controls millions of dollars. And now, for our number one most expensive mistake, though expensive here is more about pride and ammunition than billions of dollars, it's just too good to pass up. We're heading down under to Australia, 1932, for the one, the only, Great Emu War. Yes, you heard that right, a war against emus. Those big, flightless birds that look like a science experiment gone wonderfully weird. So what was the beef? Well, after World War I, many ex-soldiers in Western Australia were given land to farm wheat. Unfortunately, a massive flock of about 20,000 emus also decided that this wheat was theirs. They were ravaging crops, breaking down fences, and generally being a feathered nuisance. It was an agricultural crisis. The farmers, many of them veterans, appealed to the government for help. And the government, in its infinite wisdom, decided the best course of action was military intervention. They deployed actual soldiers, armed with Lewis machine guns under the command of a Major GPW Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. Their mission to wage war on the EMU population. I am not making this up, folks. This actually happened. They were going to machine gun the emus into submission. What followed was less of a war, and more of a Looney Tunes cartoon. The emus, it turns out, were surprisingly formidable opponents. They were fast, they were agile, and they didn't just stand there waiting to be shot. Major Meredith himself noted that the emus seemed to adopt guerrilla tactics, splitting into small groups and running erratically, making them incredibly difficult targets. He even said, if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. High praise from the enemy commander. The soldiers would set up their machine guns, take aim, and the emus would just scatter. They'd fire hundreds, sometimes thousands of rounds of ammunition with very few emu casualties to show for it. It was frustrating, it was embarrassing, and it was costing money in terms of bullets and manpower. After about a month of this feathered futility and some rather negative press coverage, can you imagine the headlines? The military withdrew. The emus had, for all intents and purposes, won the war. The initial campaign used up about 10,000 rounds of ammunition for a reported kill count of maybe a few hundred to 1,000 emus. That's a lot of bullets per bird. There was a second attempt later that was slightly more successful in terms of numbers, but still, the emus largely remained. The whole affair became a source of national ridicule. The cost wasn't in billions, but the cost to Australia's dignity, priceless. The government eventually resorted to a bounty system, which proved more effective. So, the lesson? Never. underestimate an emu. And maybe don't declare war on your national bird. It just looks bad. The Great Emu War, folks. A truly legendary blunder. I don't know about you, but my own little blunders are starting to feel pretty insignificant right about now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own expensive mistakes in the comments below. Let's all feel better together.